And I'm Guy, and this is your home for everything Alberta independence. Let's get into it.
Yes, and before we start, thank you once again so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it is what really helps us out. We've been slightly growing now. So thank you to everybody new that has subscribed. We do a live show Monday through Saturday at 5 p.m. usually every day. We try to read all, if not most if not all, I always say it wrong, of your super chats live on air after each segment. However, we do pause the whole show for super chats. Those really help us out as well. And we have memberships.
Yeah, let's get into some comments before we get into the breaking news.
Yes, so Pete says, quick question, what makes Carney think that sending our taxes to a dictator from Ukraine will get his nuclear power plants back if the U.S. doesn't help or doesn't care?
Yeah, well, it's not just Mark Carney. A matter of fact, Mark Carney has placed somebody that was very high up in the Hillary Clinton administration into the PMO's office, basically aligning his office with the Democrats in the United States. A lot of governments around the world are looking at the midterms and the 2028 elections, and they're looking at the money. As far as the money goes, they have Elon Musk and George Soros both contributing about equal funds to opposite parties there. The difference is Trump has raised about $150 million for the GOP. So I think a lot of other countries are funneling money into Ukraine now for the midterms. If they're able to pull that off, they will try an impeachment of Trump in order to fundraise for the 2028 election. If they lose the midterms, they're going to funnel even more money into Ukraine for the 2028 elections. That's how they're going to fund this thing. They can't have a JD Vance or somebody to follow up Trump that is going to push back the globalists the way Trump has done. He's done an absolutely fantastic job so far.
And again, it's not like we haven't seen that happening before. That's been a strategy that they've used before as well. But I'll continue saying hi to Rafa that says, hello, Albertans. Hello, Rafa. And soy la peor. I'm the worst person. I did type out a reply. I just have to send it to you, but thank you so much for your email. And I will do that. We do eventually reply to emails, and we're very honored for what you said. Pete says, Freeland is over there scrubbing Canadian theft clean and redistributing it to the WEF friends.
Yeah, and I think it's far more than the WEF friends right now. All the money has been cut off for those midterms and the 2028 election, other than the money that was funneled from Biden to Soros before he left office. That money's currently making its way in for the midterms. The problem is that's not enough. They're going to have to launder hundreds of millions of dollars in money. The only legitimate operation to do that right now is Ukraine, and they've been using that as a money laundering operation to give it to their WEF buddies. But right now, I think all the monies are going to flood back into America for those midterms and to go against JD Vance or Marco Rubio in 2028. There is another wild card for the Democrats, though. It looks like Tucker Carlson is looking to possibly make a third party to split the vote of the GOP, which would be absolutely devastating for Republicans, I think.
And Silverfeet says, hi, everyone. Hello, and thank you for being here. And also, because Silverfeet and I have been having a World Cup conversation, let me know who you think is going to win for the third place, which, I mean, who really cares, and who's going to win, Argentina or Spain, because I'm curious. Pete also says, yeah, the midterms passed the SAVE Act already.
Yeah, and we do have to really pay attention to the midterms. Everybody that is in Alberta independence, because if this timeline gets extended, it's going to be absolutely crucial for somebody that's supportive of Alberta independence and will recognize the country if Canada doesn't enter good faith negotiations. The best candidate for that would be a JD Vance at this point.
And also to help create pressure. I mean, having that big giant underneath also helping and saying, hey, this actually does benefit us and we do want to recognize them as a country helps a lot. Aside from also having the shield of the Americas right there as well. I mean, it's almost the rest of the continent.
Well, and we do see the Liberals all over the mainstream media, whether they're talking about Alberta independence or the midterms, saying, oh, we just have to make it to the midterms. Trump's only got a few months left. Then we're going to be able to beat him in the midterms handily. There's no way he can win the midterms. Then we can impeach him and take over in 2028. The strategy is to wait him out. And that's what they've been saying publicly. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think Trump is going to come strong in the midterms, but I think JD Vance and Marco Rubio are going to come even stronger in 2028. The wild card, again, is that third party from Tucker Carlson. If he makes that, that could possibly split the votes.
And Rafa, thank you so much for the 50 peso super chat saying empty promises just like the return of the Spanish live.
Yep.
My producer doesn't let me restart my Spanish live, but I do want to try and restart making videos. I am starting to make videos for this channel. If you haven't watched it, I am trying to do, as we were mentioning, a bunch of educational content that you can share, be it with people that are on the fence or that you're having discussions about the passport. For example, you can just send it and be like, well, look at this and let me know what you think, kind of thing. But it will return one day, hopefully. I'll let you know as soon as it does. If you don't know, I have a Spanish channel that right now is a little bit dead.
Actually, the Spanish channel is our much larger channel.
Yeah.
I think we have 11,000 subscribers over there. So,
and Rafa comes from there. So thank you, Rafa. And Kusher says, one thing I've noticed is a lot of people fear-mongering on the Canadian government drafting its citizens into the military. But what people don't understand, apparently, is the draft is illegal here.
yeah, we'll see what kind of happens. Things can change. They're changing draft laws all over the EU right now. Canada is moving closer and closer to the EU. Canada is part of NATO, so they're going to be part of that alliance. If NATO as a whole starts to request drafting of people, that could also be a thing. I mean, I think we're very much in flux, but Canada is definitely part of that alliance that wants World War III with Russia. That's why they want to wait Trump out, make sure that war keeps going, even if it's slow, and then get a Gavin Newsom or a Democrat back in office to turn on the USAID taps, as well as turn on the military money and the military funding, because without the United States backing up Europe, Europe has no war. And right now, it's a good thing that Trump is pulling away from Europe, at least militarily, because I think that's avoiding World War III.
But we have mentioned and we have talked before about how Canada is essentially empty on reserves, and all the soldiers that they do have, they're having to kind of grab from either other countries, which we don't know if they're spies or what kind of people they're bringing in, but even opening up pathways through either permanent residence or citizenship if you join the military.
Yeah,
they did announce that.
What you would have to figure if there was a major world war that did break out, Canada would completely open up mass immigration and offer immigration for military service, and then do an enlistment of people from Canada to go fight in a European war because they're part of NATO again. And this is a good thing about Alberta independence. We automatically on day one are no longer part of NATO. Danielle Smith seems to think that's a negative. In a lot of her interviews, she's talking about, well, if you actually do get your independence, you're no longer part of NATO. You're going to have to renegotiate that. No, there is no renegotiating. We don't want to be a part of that. We want direct alliances with countries that are ideologically aligned with us, like the United States.
Mm-hmm. And how many more should I do? A few more?
Oh, that's good. Why don't we go into breaking news, then we'll go back to comments. I was getting lost there for a minute. And you were right. She was extremely tired before the show. And she goes, oh, watch me. I'll turn it on.
That's what professionals do. But, no, I'm kidding. But now let's actually go to, is it breaking news? Mm-hmm. Yes, let's go to breaking news, and then we'll continue reading your comments, because again, this conversation is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Let's start with this from the Western Standard. From the Western Standard, saying, quote, exclusive, Chorus shutting down news production in Calgary, Edmonton, and transferring to Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. It's great to see the mainstream propaganda media actually leaving Alberta before we get our independence. This is good news on all fronts, I would say.
Do you want me to go into the article or just keep going?
No, but I will say there is a lot of independent media popping up in Alberta because of Alberta independence, because there's a hunger for the citizens for actual real news. And there's a lot of watchdog organizations or watchdog reporters within Alberta that's really holding mainstream media to account when they report on Alberta. And I think that's part of the reason maybe they want to leave. They don't want so much scrutiny.
And also a lot of the bigger Canadian channels, and I would even push Rebel News into that, and maybe even Western Standard as well, did get bigger and get a lot more noticeable during the Freedom Convoy, for example, when it was necessary. And I do think that is why we're seeing this bigger spread of independent journalism and independent content creators through Alberta independence, because it is giving that raison d'etre, or a reason of being. And then from there, they can continue to build, as happened after the Freedom Convoy too.
Well, absolutely. It has to be the number one freedom cause worldwide. It sets the model for every other independence movement on a global basis. And there are quite a few, because governments are going in the opposite direction of what their citizens are voicing. Governments are not putting votes to mass immigration or the most important issues that I think citizens want to have a say in. If Alberta independence is successful, we're going to see other independence movements pop up, not just all over Canada, but all over the world.
But next, Ryan Gertison says, quote, criminalizing denialism will honor the residential school survivors. That's a quote. They want to jail or fine people for having an opinion. Then this isn't new either. Just a reminder, after millions upon millions of tax dollars being spent on the search for bodies, not one has been found, but if you deny it, you go straight to jail.
And again, we have to hold the line here, and we got to call them out. They have found 0 bodies. This has been the biggest hoax in Canadian history that was helped and assisted by the federal government.
And again, this is another reason why independent news, media, content, journalism, etc. is so important, because as we continue to see the mechanisms for also censorship start to rise within Canada, well, there has to be some sort of outlet that does continue to tell the truth.
Chiefs here voted almost unanimously on a resolution for the First Nations First Ministers meeting in the fall and what the focus will be. The Chiefs are unhappy with Prime Minister Mark Carney's government to streamline major project approvals in Canada without Indigenous consultation, and if those reforms weaken environmental protections or sidestep Indigenous rights.
And pause it just for a second. And again, yesterday I led off with breaking news with a very similar story from the same press conference. This is crucially important. They're going to set precedents. There's going to be legislation, and there's going to be negotiations between First Nations and the federal government, which will influence what happens with the binding referendum in 2027, assuming it is in 2027, because the consultation period is also being negotiated here. The shortest consultation period, it looks like, that's being negotiated is 1 year. The longest could be a couple-year process. Even with a 1-year consultation process between the non-binding referendum and the binding referendum, we would not make that October 2027 date. So it's very important to kind of pay attention to these negotiations that the federal government is having with these First Nations tribes.
The Chiefs agreed to direct the Assembly of First Nations to assist in developing a national First Nations Crown Table on confederation and constitutional change to advance First Nations inherent treaty and human rights, and to have First Nations included in all fast-tracking legislation and major projects. Chiefs also unanimously passed an emergency resolution calling on Canada to have Indian residential school denialism to be treated as hate speech and included in Canada's criminal code, which was previously dismissed by Canada's Senate. Pimicikamak Chief David Moniaz says 185 children from his community who were forced to attend residential school have still not been accounted for. He says criminalizing denialism would honor the residential school survivors and prevent further harm against them.
Denialism.
You can leave it there. And I'm going to say this hoax, they just will not give up on. And they were given billions of dollars by the Trudeau government right before his election. It was almost like a payoff, but that payoff was in the name of these residential schools and the children that were never found. I remember Trudeau taking a knee for 0 bodies at this point.
Because again, it is a very useful mechanism. In this case, for both sides, but has been mostly for the First Nations chiefs. But in everything else, and with the consultation and with wanting to extend and continue to ask for that, it is also a very convenient way for the federal government to say, oh, well, we have to not start the project right away because we have to do this consultation. We were denied or we were blocked on this, so we can't actually do it. We can announce it, but we don't actually have to go through with it.
Well, you also have to realize what is kind of going on here. They're negotiating what is a consultation, what's in a consultation. What happens if they put mechanisms in there that the First Nations can get a veto through a consultation? This is why it was a big risk having a non-binding referendum first and waiting a year for that binding referendum, because they're currently building mechanisms that could severely hinder Alberta independence. And this is one of the reasons we need a leadership review on Danielle Smith and get somebody in there that will completely sidestep any consultation process until after the vote is taken, how it was originally supposed to be.
But that also understands where the use of that mechanism for the need for a consultation is coming from and how it does benefit those that want to continue to make Alberta stay within Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll go back to your comments. Pete says, the Ranchman get-together was outstanding, and says, Corey Morgan always makes me smile. And Pete also says, we bought those pieces of CRAP from the UK, not Germany. I'm guessing some sort of tool for the military. Pete says...
No, repeat that.
He's replying to a different comment.
Yeah, but if you can repeat that.
Okay. We bought those pieces of CRAP from the UK, not Germany.
Oh, okay.
See, Pete says...
I thought maybe the submarines he was talking about.
It is subs, I think, because Pete says our subs, of which we've only been able to put one at sea at a time, were built and bought and used from the UK.
Yeah, there needs to be a complete overhaul of the Canadian military, and spending billions of dollars on submarines, I don't think is the best way to do that. That has to be one of the final pieces that's kind of put in place. We really need to rely on our allies like the United States for their infrastructure with their submarines until we can build up a foundation within our own military. Subs are not the beginning foundation of that. Literally, we're recruiting soldiers from overseas, which is a complete infiltration of our military. And this is how you get infiltrated by spies from other countries.
Mm-hmm. Nick Land says, actually, the party that Tucker is proposing would be the only one that's not owned by Israel, and it would draw the people from both Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, and I know quite a bit about that party. We interviewed somebody that's very much in support of that party. I will say it will end up splitting the GOP vote. They're trying to pitch it as a left-right party. It's not a left-right party. It's a way to split the vote within the GOP, and it could mean that it's the only way a Democrat will get in office in 2028. That party will have no chance to actually win. It will have a chance to split the votes, though.
And hold on. Let us know if it's glitchy or if there's it's pausing a lot so I can try to fix it. The stream, I mean. Philip Vespa says, no, not rest in peace to Mr. Graham. He was an obstructionist who blocked Mr. Trump's brilliance policy ideas.
Yeah, and you also have to realize that third party they're making with Tucker, this is all former right-wing influencers. So it's a right-wing party meant to split the vote on the GOP, not the Democratic side.
Silverfeet says, I think Spain will beat Argentina, and for third place, France probably, but that's a dead rubber match. Yeah, I agree with that last part. I mean, as someone in the American continent, I do hope Argentina wins, but we'll see. Nick Land says, Trump has lost major support because of what he has been doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you can see the rise of a potential third party, but there still is a lot of time between now and the midterms, and definitely between now and 2028. Mm-hmm. He's done a lot globally. I think internally within the United States, there is a lot of discontent. It is a lot of discontent, and that's why you could see the rise of a third party. But globally, I'm absolutely pleased on the way he has globalists in absolute retreat right now and has cut off most funding for them.
Mm-hmm. Nick Land says, I had 16,000 subscribers when they shut us down for the Freedom Convoy.
Oh, wow.
And again, it's unfortunate that it does happen, and that a lot of people have also forgotten about it and the importance of channels like that.
We can expect a lot more of that to be happening with a lot of these bills that are coming to fruition within Canada right now. Censorship is on a dramatic rise in Canada, and because they're not the first country to bring in these censorship bills, they have catching up to do. So I think they're going to start setting precedents as soon as they become law.
Mm-hmm. Sean says, did they buy the lesser jet, the Swedish jet that is a generation behind the American F-35 and costs nearly the same? Carney would rather virtue signal than protect Canadians.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Carney is just headed in the wrong direction. He has two oceans protecting him, yet he wants to align himself with the EU, who is hell-bent on war right now.
Mm-hmm. And Jesse Rose, hello, says Canadian military is not what it used to be. We used to work as a team. Now it's me, myself, and I. But also virtue signaling, ideological capture, and caring about everything except the actual job that a military should have.
Well, and tampons in the men's bathroom, which is absolutely crazy for a military to do.
Mm-hmm. And Jesse Rose also says liberals throw money at stuff with no idea what is going on or what it's necessary, but also maybe they do know what's going on, and it is quite purposeful to continue the laundry machine of money.
Yeah, well, but it's not just a laundry machine of money at this point. It's one thing if they're just laundering money, which I'm completely against, but it's another thing when you're laundering money and intentionally trying to destroy Western civilization here. And that's exactly what is going on, not just in Europe, not just in the UK, but Australia, Canada. You look all around the world. Trump put through a major monkey wrench in the United States because it looked like Biden was just trying to hand over power to China at that point.
Mm-hmm. But now let's go to Alberta Stay Free and get a bit more local. And let's start with this from, hold on. There we go. From Rise of Alberta says, quote, Keith Wilson explains why Alberta independence is ultimately about the future we leave behind. Our children and grandchildren deserve a safer, stronger, and more prosperous Alberta, free from Ottawa's arbitrary control.
And he's absolutely right here. And I'm glad Keith Wilson continues to speak. The telethon is coming up, and I know quite a few people, including us, are scheduled to interview him. So it should be an absolute fantastic day. That's this Saturday.
We know we can do better. We can do better for our kids. We can do better for our seniors. We can do better for the safety of our communities. We can do better for preserving our culture. We can do better economically if we can free ourselves from the arbitrary control called Ottawa. Alberta has outgrown Canada. Canada no longer works for Alberta. Every single day, to be very, very transparent with you, there's a guy on this shoulder. He says, Wilson, what the heck are you doing, man? Like, there's this thing called golfing and winter properties in Phoenix with pools. And this guy says, yeah, but wait a minute, that's just money. And by every single objective measure, it makes sense for Alberta to be independent. By every single objective measure, our kids and our grandkids will have a better, more prosperous, successful life if we can free ourselves from the arbitrary control of Ottawa.
And he's absolutely right. And we're very lucky to have Keith Wilson. He is that steady presence in Alberta independence that can really talk to the middle.
And not only kids and grandkids, but I would also say that message is applicable to younger people themselves. Like, you are able to have a better future if you get to decide and don't have to be subject to everything that Canada is essentially doing to drive everybody away already. I mean, we always talk about how many people have already left Canada and how many young people specifically that do want to start a business or have any sort of future, build a house, have kids, are looking or have already left as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, when it comes to big issue policies like is Canada going to go to war one day? Are they not? Just huge issue policies. The country is just too big at this point. It would be nice if each province actually had the power to decide these things for themselves. And that's the way it was originally supposed to be. But the federal government is consolidating power at an absolute authoritarian rapid rate. Independence seems like to be the only real option, especially for conservative provinces that don't believe in this new ideology of progressivism.
And also because in the original plan, the original plan that leads Canada does allow for that to happen.
But that's not what's happened. It's been thrown on its head ever since Trudeau came in office.
Because it was the plan, the mechanism itself, the Westminster system and everything else that rules Canada does allow for that to happen as well.
So it's supposed to allow for that to happen. It's no longer doing that. And they're completely changing and remodeling the system. So
I mean, that it allows it to be turned in its head by anybody that wants to, like Trudeau wanted to. But next, Jason Levine says, what a stunning entrance. Love the Corey B. Morgan signs as well.
Well, it actually doesn't allow for it to be turned on its head unless you have certain parts of the system absolutely captured. The U.S. systems the same way. All democratic systems can be captured, and that's what we're seeing with not only within Canada, but within the U.S. and other systems through the judiciary primarily.
But next, Jason Levine says, what a stunning entrance. Love the Corey B. Morgan signs as well.
Yeah, and this is absolutely fantastic. Flying freedom hard here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's it. Okay. Thought it was a video.
I thought you were going to comment on it as well.
Well, I mean, I'm going to comment on this next one. John Tompkins says, coming up this Saturday, looking for a way to support Alberta independence and the various groups working hard to get the message out, including some of those signs that we just saw in that other picture. Tune in. I'll be there. We will be there. And again, it's going to be to help raise funds for third-party advertisers on the side of independence, because we know that we don't have the mechanisms that the other side does have.
Well, and not just any third-party advertisers. The big seven, I would say, that can really be trusted. So if you don't know who to donate to, you can go to the telethon website, and those seven third-party advertisers that I think are really the most trustable third-party advertisers within Alberta independence will be there, and there will be links to their pages.
Again, it's coming up this Saturday, July 18th, and I'll talk a little bit more about it after the video.
And yeah, absolutely fantastic. It's going to be a big day for Alberta independence. We're already raising more money than the other side officially. The problem is unofficially, Forever Canada is not declaring how much money they're raising. And it seems like they're raising more than maybe anybody else. They have a bus, the amount of signs they're printing out. It seems like unlimited funds. Where are these unlimited funds coming from? The other side typically always wants to claim that we have foreign interference in Alberta independence, but we're very transparent on how we're raising this money. Forever Canada is not, and I'm not claiming foreign interference with Forever Canada. What I'm claiming is federal interference, and that's illegal as well. All donations must actually come from Alberta and Albertans.
Yes, and again, I will say it will be streamed live on 10 plus YouTube channels, including this one. It is from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And there will be some events also on the ground happening consecutively. And again, you can watch it on any of those 10 different channels. You can go to several different ones, but it will be a continuous stream that we will all have up.
Yeah.
So you can look for that one this coming Saturday, July 18th. And lastly, Freedom Calendar, or not lastly. Yes, lastly, Freedom Calendar or Max says, Alberta is beautiful. I went off social media for a couple of days.
Yeah, this is just a fantastic little video that he made, and it really does show the beauty of Alberta, especially in the summertime. And those river shots were just absolutely spectacular. And that was Max there. He does a lot of the audio and visual for the live events. And he's going to be doing a lot of that for the live telethon event as well.
Yes, he's going to be incredibly important as well. I've been, what's it called? Tech supporting him and calling him and asking, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that for the upcoming stream? So he has been great as well, answering all of everybody's questions and setting everything up as well. And it is important to have that person. And when we interviewed him, I think we both told him, it is so valuable to be able to have a lot of these events and a lot of these conferences and speakers and speaking events be recorded and live streamed and then recorded for posterity as well. So he's essentially doing the job of a historian.
Yeah.
And again, this is a historic moment when Alberta becomes independent. But now let's go back to your comments and then we'll go to Alberta
Politics.
Yes. Sean says, you guys sure are opinionated by the F-35s. You know, the Europeans imputed into its design, hence the variant that uses direct jet engine, rise and land vertically. That wasn't for Americans. Yeah,
here's the thing. We should not be buying these European equipment. I look a lot into these jet developments, different military development. And I mean, everything needs to be put on the table for negotiations with the Americans to renegotiate the USMCA. And when you start buying submarines from Germany, jets from other countries in Europe, all that should be bought from the Americans, but it needs to be put on the table for incentives for the Americans to renew the USMCA. The big jet project which was supposed to be taken up, I believe, by France and Germany. It was a 9-year project. A bunch of money went into it, and they recently just canceled it. All that money went to the side because a lot of these European countries just don't want to share the technologies amongst each other, even when they agree to it in contracts.
Michael Drader, hello, says Elections Alberta doesn't want to seem to do any investigating concerning Forever Canadian. And again, this wasn't the first time that this has happened. There was another thing where they were supposed to investigate Forever Canadian and Lukaszuk, and they didn't.
Yeah, but we need to keep putting pressure on them. There was that other time, and there was a resolution to that where eventually Lukaszuk did register as a third-party advertiser. Now that he's registered as a third-party advertiser, that says to me that he has to show his finances, and he's not doing that. What can we do? All we can do is keep complaining, keep writing emails, keep calling. And when I do interviews, I'm going to ask those questions.
Michael Drader says, Elections Alberta never answers my calls relating being a scrutineer for October 19th.
Go figure.
Exactly. And especially when they're not answering calls from citizens that want to be engaged and involved. That should be the bread and butter, and they should be clapping for citizens to come do that for them.
Well, they need 60,000 employees for that day, and they're saying they're not going to be able to hire them. Well, if they're not even answering calls, maybe they're intentionally not trying to hire them to lengthen out how many days this process is going to be to actually count these votes.
Mm-hmm. And now, hold on. Jesse Rose says, if you want to know what to invest in, just look at what the politicians are investing in.
Especially Nancy Pelosi and her husband.
Jesse Rose also says, just remember, it gets cold here. We need a jet that can run in cold and with 2 engines, just as older Canadian military pilots.
Yeah, but you also need jets and military equipment with your closest allies or right along that border, which you can cross-train with and have mechanics that can actually fix it and parts that can be literally flown overnight to fix these jets.
He knows a lot more about this than I do. James B says, buying military equipment from a foreign country, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, and I also think the military is in a huge influx when it comes to technology right now. Costs are coming massively down on the way they're manufacturing missiles and other things. Maybe waiting on the very large ticket items and spending a lot of money on a complete overhaul of your actual base military, your basic soldiering equipment, whether it's guns, things like this.
Mm-hmm. And Jesse Rose says, as the people that have done the job, not politicians or the higher brass.
Yeah.
Regarding military stuff. And Philip Espa says, if you buy military equipment from European enemies, that is a FA action from Carney. He's about to FO.
Well, and there's another thing we need to bring up here. A lot of these soldiers don't even have houses. And this is becoming a real problem. If you can't even house your soldiers, and you need to invest a lot of money in recruitment, so you're not recruiting people from overseas that aren't even Canadian citizens at this point. There's plenty of Canadians that would join the Canadian military if you had a complete overhaul on this thing and actually invested some money in recruitment and got ideology out of the military.
Exactly. But now let's go into Alberta politics. It's an interesting first story.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And yes, as I mentioned, let's start with this from Gen Xer saying, quote, this happened at the live in Windsor. A guy wearing a kirpan, that's a knife, got told that he has to leave because it's a weapon. He immediately starts recording and crying racism.
Yeah, so he's carrying what he would call a religious weapon. Everybody knows what that is in Canada. Sikhs don't have to wear helmets for motorcycles. They're also allowed to carry weapons because they're a specialty group or class. This is absolutely ridiculous. No specialty groups or classes in a new Alberta.
Mm-hmm. Because again, that is when you start losing actual equality and justice.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he shouldn't be able to carry this kind of weapon, but everybody should be able to carry it, or nobody should be able to carry it. There shouldn't be specialty groups and classes that can only carry it.
Especially split down ideological lines, I would say.
So you're kicking me out of the gym right now. Wait, you're kicking me out of the gym right now because you are scared that I'm going to take my religious symbol. So you're scared that I'm going to take this religious symbol and kill somebody.
What I'm saying is you have a weapon on your person. A member has brought it to my attention, and for the safety of me and everybody else in the gym, I'm asking you to leave.
But, well, I don't understand though. I don't understand.
We're a private gym. We're allowed to deny access, and you're not allowed to.
But you allowed me in the you allowed me in the gym with the sun. Oh, you didn't see it. So you didn't see it.
No.
So what were you doing then? So what do you do? What do they pay you for?
I'm not responding.
They don't pay you. They don't pay you to look around. They don't pay you to be aware. You just let any random person in the gym. Then you didn't see me walking with this. I'm not harassing you. I'm standing right here. I'm not harassing anybody. This is like, it's insane. Getting kicked out of the gym because these guys are apparently saying that this kirpan is dangerous. Good life in Windsor. Good life in Windsor. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a weapon. It can be dangerous, and if they don't want,
it has been used as a weapon before in the UK and in Canada too.
Well, and it's a private facility. If they don't want him in, they can deny service there. It's their right to do so.
But again, because
if he wants to bring it in, go to a Sikh gym that's going to allow him to bring it in there.
That too.
Yeah.
But, or let everybody else who wants to come in and maybe have to defend themselves with knives as well because it's their ideological religious reasons or whatever reason they want to use come in as well.
And you can't put it in your locker where you're working out. You need your weapon when you're lifting weights. This is absolutely ridiculous at this point.
Dangerous. You could stab yourself. But again, it's how much are we willing to tolerate the separation of these specialty groups and classes and the demands that they have, superseding the demands of every single other citizen and every single other specialty group and class that has been created.
Well, every Canadian citizen they're trying to disarm right now, which is absolutely ridiculous with firearms. Like there is definitely a double standard here, and they're open about their double standard in Canada. Every specialty group or class has a different double standard they're anointed with, and I'm tired of it.
But next, JJ McCullough, we were talking about him yesterday, says, quote, Jeff Rath is the only Alberta separatist. He is often the only source in articles about, quote, Alberta separatism, and yet the Canadian news media refuses to make his name well known in order to make his movement seem bigger than it is. He's always just lawyer.
Yeah, and I don't like Jay McCullough, and I completely disagree with him. I actually wanted to go down to the comments because Derek fired back the unacceptable fringe, and it was absolutely fantastic.
And the article that he was retweeting, I guess, says, court freezes accounts of separatist lawyer as First Nation alleges misappropriation. But Derek Smith from the Unacceptable Fringe says, why don't you sit on my middle finger and take it for a ride, JJ? Jeff Rath is a true Alberta patriot, and you don't know stuff about us effing loser. And yes, JJ McCullough uses about a lot, and it does get annoying.
Yeah, and Derek's absolutely right here. Jeff Rath has been with us from the beginning, has done a lot of work behind the scenes, almost more than anybody else. I'd say maybe Keith Wilson is on parallel with him. But he's also addressing this issue today, and it's going to be resolved in court. He's not trying to hide anything here. They're trying to use lawfare against Jeff Rath, and I fully expect them to start using it against other people in Alberta independence as well.
But it's also interesting that in that, JJ McCullough was essentially trying to paint Jeff as the leader of the separatist, as he calls it, movement, when the power of Alberta independence and the whole movement itself is that it is a grassroots movement. There's not one anointed leader. There's several spokespeople, I would call them rather. And that confuses them because they can't just go and attack one. They have to go attack a bunch of us, a bunch of people, and a bunch of those spokespeople, and they end up looking more and more ridiculous themselves when they try to do that.
Just like it confuses JJ there, it's confusing the federal government as well. That's why the game plan of having a decentralized movement is the right game plan, I believe. They don't know how to address it right now.
Exactly. And next, something they do try to address all the time, 24/7, especially now that we're nearing the summer. CBC Watcher says, quote, CBC climate fear corn and propaganda on the National last night, saying that Environment Canada projects 2026 to be one of the country's hottest years on record, as was the last one, as was the last one, as was the last one.
And I will say this, because of this, I was looking up some statistics and I got the average for the last, I think it was about 10 years. And cold-related deaths in Canada, I think was 22 cold-related deaths every year. And, cold-related deaths was 129 deaths every year. Hot-related deaths or like heat stroke, things like that was 22 deaths. So far more people are dying of cold than heat. If that's your metric, a few degrees aren't going to hurt Canada, especially if we're warming up.
Environment Canada projects 2026 to be one of the country's hottest years on record. Canada is warming twice as fast as the global average. Climate change is driven largely by the burning of fossil fuels, and so, as Canada announces more pipeline projects to export oil, climate scientists are putting extra heat on those in power.
Climate physics aren't going to change just because our politics do, and we are ultimately going to have to address this problem.
The Prime Minister has said decisions being made now will secure Canada's energy future, admitting they come at a cost.
The changes we have made will mean that our emissions will be higher in the next few years.
In Europe, relentless heatwaves this summer are linked to thousands of deaths.
What's happening there in the cities?
Jennifer Vanos researches connections between extreme heat and human health. She says
Sorry, there's a lot of points I need to address before I forget them and before we continue moving on from the video. Number one, yes, this actually does help the federal government not have to go ahead with those projects or to be able to continue to, after they start them or say they're going to start them, continue to implement and impose things like net zero. So this kind of propaganda does help for that. Also, apparently we have climate amnesia or heat amnesia because every single year it's the same story. And especially in Europe, right now they were just going into what's going on in Europe and a lot of people are suffering. It's because of their own climate change policies and net zero policies that they're not allowing a lot of places to have air conditioning, which is where the deaths are actually coming from people, especially older or children that cannot take the heat, withstand the heat, when there's a very easy solution, which is get an air conditioner and allow your people to actually not die of heat.
Let's actually talk for a minute about the two countries that benefit the most from a warming climate. Do you know the two countries?
No.
Russia and Canada. Massive amounts of oil and natural gas reserves will be unlocked. Waterways will be unlocked in the north. We're talking billions, if not trillions of dollars will be unlocked with a few degrees warmer temperature. And Canada is the big beneficiary from that. Also, less people die every year from heat than from cold. Far more people, almost 5 times as many people die every year from cold. This is absolutely ridiculous in a cold weather country like Canada to even be complaining about this. And another thing, with the forest fires that are going on right now, these are man-made forest fires and government neglect forest fires. They don't do control burning. They don't do controlled cuts and things like that, as well as they don't do forest cleanup. So you can expect, as well as the massive amounts of glyphosate the Canadian government dumps all over its forest. It's dry tinder ready to spark up. The federal government loves forest fires because it allows them to lean into climate change and give billions and launder money.
Must not be complacent.
If we continue to see more intense and longer lasting heat waves in our cities, then yes, we could see trends in terms of the cost to human health similar to Europe.
Juanita, the City of Toronto is pointing people to hundreds of places to cool off, such as this pool, which is one of several that's going to be staying open tonight until nearly midnight. Health authorities are also urging people to monitor for heat exhaustion, such as headaches and fatigues. They're among signs that you need to get to some.
And that's where also the fear corn aspect of it all comes through as well, by saying, oh, you might get dizzy, and these are all the signs of heat exhaustion, which, yes, it's important to know, but at the same time, this happens every single year. And fluctuating climate for the past centuries period, since they've actually started recording heat waves and climate.
Again, overall, it's beneficial for Canada to heat up. Number one, financially, it is, even for loss of lives. Less people will die every year if it's colder for more of the year. If it's less cold for more of the year, I meant to say.
But Stephen Johnson, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying Canada is so big, wonder which zone they're referring to. Applying a localized phenomenon to everywhere is true propaganda. Yes, and again, not acknowledging that this happens every single year, and they could be doing other things to fix it, mitigate it, manage it, and also look at past past trends for the past few centuries, decades, etc., since they started recording, but they don't do that, and instead they say this is unprecedented, when actually, no, it's not.
Well, it is unprecedented by the way they're calculating it, because the way they're calculating it, they've taken a lot of the northern temperature monitoring centers and just completely shut them down in Canada. So you're only having the most southern temperature monitoring centers giving you your average statistics there. So of course it's going to be much higher now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's go back to your comments and then we'll get into Alberta personalities. Pete says the problem with the U.S. patrol jets is that they've become too expensive. Buy some 4th-gen Swedish patrol fighters and American kick-ass stealth jets for threats.
Yeah, I think we just need to focus on housing, weapons, just your basic things for the Canadian military right now. A complete overhaul of the military. We can put it off a couple years to invest in submarines or even jets. But the reason I would say, the only reason you would really want to buy jets and submarines now is if you're going to buy them from the U.S. and put that on the table as part of the USMCA renegotiation. That would have been a big sticking point for the United States, I think.
True. And also showing a willingness to continue to cooperate militarily, which right now we're doing the exact opposite and saying we want to bring in almost like random people from different to join the military and actually help them on their path to citizenship or to actually staying within the country. They've never mentioned what kind of background checks they're going to do. They've never mentioned how many people. Well, they did kind of mention how many people they wanted to bring in. But again, is that a good idea, especially when a lot of those people are coming from places that the U.S. has already deemed as not that friendly security-wise to the U.S. itself?
Well, it's also much easier to launder money on big-ticket military items if you go through the EU. The Ukraine recently fired somebody because they were buying U.S. weaponry, and a lot of these countries want to get from the EU because it's much easier to drive up the prices that are not the actual prices.
I do like this comment from James B because, yeah, he kind of hits it on the head. Says, Temu military gear, no thanks, Carney. And right now, Canada looks a lot like they're importing a lot of different Temu-style things into the country.
Well, I'm glad you kind of brought that up. And maybe you don't know what, a lot of people might not know what he's talking about. I don't know if he's talking about this exact situation, but there's been this huge propaganda push in Ukraine saying, oh man, we have state-of-the-art drones now. What came out, and I believe it was in the Financial Journal, it was yesterday, but it had been reported on by independent media before this. The EU is buying drone parts from China, basically putting in US software, shipping them to Ukraine slapping a sticker on there, and they're calling them Ukraine-made drones and saying they have the state-of-the-art technology. No, all the parts have been funneled from China. First they're from China, then they go to the Philippines. That's where they're bought from the EU, then shipped over to the EU, put together, US software is put in there, shipped to Ukraine, then a Ukraine sticker is thrown on there. It's a complete scam. And this is going to hurt military operations in the long run by gaslighting people, saying they have state-of-the-art technology when really they're just buying used parts from China. Well, not used parts, but buying parts from China.
Basically the same thing that's going to start happening with cars in Canada as well, now that they're importing a bunch of highly flammable, I will call them, Chinese EVs. Jesse Rose says, James, you hit it on the head. Good on you. Yes, exactly. Just table everything. Let's teamify everything because we're too cheap to actually do things properly. Jesse Rose says, Pete, love ya. As the men and women that fly this stuff, they will point out all the issues that we didn't think about. And they'll have to live with them and maybe even, unfortunately, have to suffer the consequences of a plan that is poorly implemented with very little money wanting to be spent on it.
I mean, Canada just doesn't have enough money for these really big ticket items. They can't even afford to make a normal military, let alone submarines and planes and things like this. These are the last things you should be buying as a military, unless it's going to be part of the negotiations, again, for the USMCA.
Philip Vespa says, I learned in law class that the courts allow the kirpan, that knife the Sikhs wear, but it has to be concealed. I disagree with that ruling, but Canada will be Canada. So in a way, he was kind of already breaking a rule because apparently it wasn't concealed. But also, I don't love the idea of that random people having a concealed knife for who knows what reason.
Well, I'm fine with it because I'm fine with it.
Yes.
I think everybody should be able to have not only concealed knives, but firearms as well, especially if they're licensed.
But everybody.
But it has to be everybody. It can't be rules for thee, but not for me.
James B says, remember these stories are coming from the same people that said safe and effective and believe that the common cold should be renamed and spread the fear.
Oh, yeah. And we have a great clip later on RU and BLE about that.
James B also says, as legitimate as the $3 bill with Trudeau's face painted on it.
Yeah.
Dar Robinson, hello, says, climate change, global warming is invented, I will have to say, because YouTube does eventually catch on to what we're talking about. International meteorologists said climate is not a threat to the world.
Yeah, they've
already said it a million times.
Trump called them out at the UN and they had to come out with a statement saying they were wrong on their projections. So that's the thing. And they're no longer saying global warming. They're now saying climate change because it's very erroneous and they can't really pin somebody down on climate change. Climate is always changing and it always has been. If it is warming up, which that's what they actually want to say, but they can't prove that anymore. But if it is warming up, Canada will be one of the big countries that benefits from that.
Donna Robinson also, I think, hits it on the head here, and it is something we continuously note. Says hot temperatures used to be 35 plus, even 40. Like 40 is when people would start getting all shocked. Now it's 25 plus. The government is preparing us for climate lockdowns, or to continue with the alarmism and be able to use and implement different things that benefit them, all in the name of climate change.
Yeah.
James B says, isn't it amazing that when you pay arsonists to light fires, and they do.
Yeah.
And then you can continue to propagandize upon
Let's go into Alberta Personalities now if we can.
Yes.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with... I lost my button. Speaking of, literally, Breaking 911 says, quote, terrifying footage shows a view from inside a train as it becomes surrounded by raging wildfire flames near Armstrong, Ontario.
Now, this was a fantastic video, and I said this, I think I made the quote on our X today about this particular clip, and our X account is complimentary to the show where I post all the stories before the show actually airs, but this is a sign of real masculinity. These guys stayed cool, calm, and collective the entire time.
This could potentially overtake us here. This is getting a little scary.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Okay, yeah, this is...
Okay, y'all need to hurry up here. Like, seriously, we're encased in flames now.
You guys gotta go backwards. Go.
Hello, Jody, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you there. I'm telling them you were notching up.
Yeah, this has got to move fucking quick here. Holy crap. Oh, that's all right. This kind of burnt off, so we'll be okay now.
And you can leave it there. And everybody was safe. Nobody got hurt from that, which was fantastic to hear as well. But if you have somebody else in that situation, they may have panicked. probably ditch the train, something like that.
But also imagine how hot it does get in there. But
absolutely hot.
Whose fault is this actually? It is the fault of, and we've seen it. We've seen studies about it. We've seen people talking about it, experts like they like to quote talking about it, about how Canada has continuously mismanaged its own forests, also spread glyphosate, which actually dries everything up, and then hasn't removed the kindling that falls to the ground, or done controlled burns so it doesn't continuously spread, or cleaning the forest.
Fire breaks as well.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But brave on them.
And again, this could be profitable for the Canadian federal government. Have mass logging where you're doing tens of thousands of acres of fire lines and brake lines, which are cutting in the trees and then selling those trees on the market. So it would basically pay for itself at that point.
But next, Lips of TikTok says, quote, President Trump reveals plan to replace illegal alien truck drivers with U.S. veterans. Let me play it.
And this is an absolutely fantastic policy. The problem with Canada is it's migrants that are actually in charge of the military now. That's where they're recruiting from. So it would be hard to have the same policy. I guess you could have veterans from the last generation, but I absolutely love this policy. Trump has made a similar policy to try to transition veterans into teachers as well.
Today, I'm making one more important announcement. My administration will soon take historic action to get illegal alien truck drivers who are just killing a lot of people. They can't read signs. Many of them are on drugs or alcohol, and they shouldn't be driving these things. And they came in totally illegally, and we don't want them, but they are driving all over American roadways. And we're going to replace them with proud American veterans. We're going to take our veterans. We're going to make them. We're going to teach them a lot about driving trucks, and in many cases they know. We're going to say any American who's driven a heavy truck for our military will automatically be eligible for a commercial driver's license. So we're going to get them taken care of. Today I'm making
a fantastic job there. I mean, they're already spending a lot of money on training these people in the military. Once they leave the military, they should really lean into that training that they've had.
And that's like, I'll use a different analogy. That's like saving two birds with one stone. Like literally getting rid of one problem, which we recently had and continue to talk about that story in Canada, where a truck driver who shouldn't have been driving and didn't pretty much know how to drive did end up ending with the lives of a whole team of young people. And
there's been a series of stories about truck drivers that I just haven't brought up on the show over the last 2 days because we've reported on it so many times at this point.
Mm-hmm. And Steven Jensen, thank you so much for the $2 super chat, saying they were waiting for a train from the other direction. Thank you for adding to the story. And lastly, Jaden Xer says, quote, Carney doesn't like tough questions, especially from women, apparently. Watch this exchange from CTV's Power Play.
And this was the exchange I was talking about yesterday. And Carney's answer is not acceptable to me because he's saying, well, he's different. Well, he's not different because he was part of the previous administration. He was one of the primary parts of the previous administration. So you're really getting a new administration. It's not new. It's the exact same story.
And I do take the point on the fresh faces, but even when you point to the experience of those who are in the sort of biggest roles, the reason why I highlight them is because they were at the forefront of the decisions that the previous government made. They were. I mean, Melanie Joly, François-Philippe Champagne, he led the industrial policy. Now he'll be in charge of finance. Dominic LeBlanc led a lot of those files as well. We are used to hearing from them, justifying and explaining the decisions that Justin Trudeau made. So now we're going to hear from them again.
Well, first off, now you're hearing from me. I'm a new prime minister.
So how do you articulate, because you conceded today, you did through the campaign, that the mandate you have is one for change. It's against that backdrop that I'm asking those questions about those big faces for your cabinet. How would you articulate to Canadians like what that change will actually look like? Is it just you?
Well, no. Okay,
Is it just you? Why didn't she say you were part of the previous administration too? You were the economic advisor. You're the primary reason people voted was based upon economics. You're the one that destroyed the last administration, and now you're continuing to destroy Canada.
If I may, you are going into process and personnel. I'm going to results. I'm talking about one Canadian economy. I'm talking about getting rid of all the federal.
But those personnel didn't deliver.
No. Please, let me answer the question.
Yeah, and absolutely ridiculous at this point. And it's funny how he just keeps saying, well, I'm new. Well, no, you're not new.
No. And he also used that as part of his campaign, saying, oh, I know what's going on in Canada. I'm a banker. I was financial advisor. I do this. I've done that. And yet, when are we supposed to, or when are we able to judge him on the grocery prices that he also promised we would be able to do? Still haven't heard much about that. But let's go back into your comments and then into Alberta's Canada. Sean says, Guy is gaslighting Canadians. He wants Alberta to have a far superior firepower. He wants a great Alberta army. Yes, actually. And Sean.
And again, we reported on Anduril the other day, and I've been researching Anduril for a couple of years now. They're revolutionizing military manufacturing, and rather than buying billion-dollar planes, billion-dollar subs, hundreds of billions of dollars, invest in car-like manufacturing that's 14 different parts for per missile, only 14 parts per missile, and 3 tools can put together. The military is completely revolutionizing right now the way it's making different products because the way they were manufacturing before was far too high.
Sean says about Carney, Guy, he's a new person, like a whole new thing. You can't blame him for anything. Yeah, apparently everybody else also got amnesia, not just about the climate, but about every single other thing as well. Chasey Rose says Canada make up for just under 2% of carbon when it comes to cars and factories. We're paying the most. Yes, and actually Canada itself, because of all the trees that are there, is a carbon sink, which actually means they output less than they actually suck in carbon-wise.
Yeah. So if you were actually calculating how much carbon a country's putting out, Canada's actually negative on the amount of carbon it puts out every year.
And 300 miles per hour Martyr says Canada has been basically net zero, give or take, pittance for many decades, and Greenpeace stats back that up. But not just from Greenpeace, from a lot of other of their little experts and scientists, where they cherry pick which quotes they actually use and which people they actually interview that can continue with the fear mongering.
Yeah,
as they propaganda.
I think overall, the amount of carbon Canada is taking out every year, it's 4 days worth of what China puts into the atmosphere. So
Jesse Rose asks, Natalie Guy, did you guys hear about the story with issues in recruiting in the military? We are bringing in people from other countries that don't respect women, culture, or authority. And yes, we covered that story. Harrison Faulkner, was it?
Yeah, Harrison Faulkner, but we've covered it quite a few times at this point. It's ridiculous the way they're using foreign recruitment into the military. I fully expect them to start trading citizenship for military service in the future.
Hold on.
I think all of NATO is going to really start to do that, and especially as they prep for this war that they see coming with Russia. So,
and because I love that everybody's having conversations today in the comments, but it makes it harder for me to try to read them. So apologies for that. James B says these uniparty politicians, all politicians, are selected, not elected. People really need to wake up. Yes.
Yeah, and people are starting to wake up in Alberta right now because of Alberta independence. They've woken up to Danielle Smith, I think, and that's why a leadership review needs to be had with her.
And Jesse Rose says, Canada is borrowing money to try to do things. Not good. We need to be an energy powerhouse and wouldn't need to borrow or be in the gigantic deficit or maybe even the inflation that is currently happening in Canada.
Yeah, they need to just deregulate, bring in private industry, period. They also need to deregulate when it comes to all these other industries. Just have a zero tariff policy, take down your regulations so you can compete with American businesses. If you can compete with American businesses, you'll be able to sell your products on the world market. Canadian products are too high right now because of the amount of regulation inputs.
Exactly. But now let's actually go to Alberta's Canada.
Yeah.
Yes. I always forget which one we're on. Let's start with, and apologies, that was a bit glitchy as well, but I'll fix it over tomorrow. CBC Watcher says, quote, Francois Philippe Champagne, or the Chihuahua, just BS'd his way through the Gordie Howe bridge questions with barely a butt from David Cochrane. They still don't know how to handle this.
Okay, so Minister, just one more topic I want to touch on you with, and this is about whatever the specifics are of the deal to reopen the Gordie Howe Bridge. I know the Prime Minister has explained it, that at least on principle as he sees it, that they share the net profits after a certain number of things are paid back, operating costs, interest during construction, all of those sorts of things. But Bloomberg has a report out where a U.S. official is contradicting that, saying that loan interest and depreciation won't be included in the calculation. So there will actually be more money going to the United States because of fewer deductions on the Canadian side. I don't know if you can resolve this contradiction for us, but do you have a dollar amount of just what it is that Canada has agreed to send to the United States, at least in broad strokes? Because I know you need to see actual traffic and actual costs to give us with precision, but are we talking tens of millions, hundreds of millions? What are we talking about here in this agreement to open the bridge?
Well, first of all, I think you were quite right, David, to refer to the comments of the Prime Minister. And you said two words that matters a lot: net profits.
Yeah.
That's what we're sharing. And I think these two words are key in the calculation. And I would stand by what the Prime Minister has explained and described to Canadians. And also, because today we had, the Canadian ambassador to Washington talking to the colleagues, the sums that will go south of the border will have to be reinvested in economic development south of the border.
But how much?
And that is kind of
Do we know, like, what's the number value of this, right?
Well, listen, you have to look at the traffic, but you will see these numbers and actual numbers over time. But what I wanted to say is that there's kind of a positive feedback loop, because the more is invested in economic development, the more trade you're going to see. And the more trade you're going to see, the more profit.
And you can leave it there. And that's a lie. There's not a feedback loop here, because there's two other ways to enter the country right around that particular bridge. And all you're going to do is divert traffic from the other two entry points into the new entry point. And once the new entry point fills up and the wait times are too long, the people are just going to go back to the other two entry points, which are going to be shorter wait times eventually.
But also, I mean, egg on his and the Canadian government's face if they didn't know or have any kind of speculation or at least calculation of some sort of what would happen and how many people would actually be using it and have those numbers before they started building the
Well, the Americans have already talked about this, and this is why I know it's not this circular feedback loop where it's just going to make more and more money. A matter of fact, it's going to cap out really quick, and when there starts to be long wait times because people want to go the fastest route, they're going to stop using the new bridge and they're going to go back to the other two entry points, which are not closing down. If you already have two entry points, you didn't really need a third entry point right there, but we'll see what happens.
Pete, thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying, guys, a biker, once a biker, always a biker. And not bicycle, but motorcycle.
Yeah. Well, I used to like bicycle riding as well, but my back started hurting.
Oh, yeah. He would take the dog on his back.
Yeah. I used to have a backpack for the dog.
Yeah.
And we used to go to like 5 dog parks in a day.
Yes. But then you can't do that here either. The people drive too insane, and you would probably both know here.
Thank you. Thank you, government, Nat.
But next, Corey Morgan says, body count at Kamloops residential school site remains at 0. I dare you to charge me. Because, as we were talking, again, Assembly of First Nations calls for criminalization of residential school denialism.
And exactly. And we got to keep really raising our voice on this. There's been 0 bodies found. This is one of the biggest hoax in Canadian history. And people know this. But we need to make sure they don't start passing these hate speech laws saying if we say there are 0 bodies found, that we're going to get time in prison and massive fines. This is absolutely ridiculous. If they set the precedent here on the truth, they're going to be able to make the truth illegal to say.
Literally, and I wish I could always bring that meme up for George Orwell saying, is it too early to say I told you so? It's too late to say I told you so by George Orwell, but essentially that's what he talks about and how they are able to manipulate language in order to suit and continue to have control over the people. But in this case, and with what they're proposing and what they're asking for, they're calling for, essentially by criminalizing denialism of something that didn't happen. And there's no evidence about. Francis Widdowson would already be in jail. Lindsay Shepherd would already be in jail. Jordan Peterson would probably already be in jail. We would probably be in jail.
Well, and then all right-wing influencers on social media, they would be able to shut down their channels. I mean, there's major implications for passing a law like this, passing a law on the truth. When you try to silence the truth, that's the opposite of free speech here. And then you want to try to regulate that truth into existence over American companies who are supposed to be legislated under free speech laws in America. But they're trying to push international law, and they're trying to make international law supersede American law, which is ridiculous.
And to mix it in with what we were talking about at the beginning, just to prove that I'm not that tired, this also is being done under the name of specialty group and class to benefit in a larger extent and to be able to increase the control mechanisms that the government has over all the rest of the citizens and benefiting just a few, which they've already done for who knows, since
and
this story
again,
came up.
what's going to happen if they take private property rights away and they set that precedent in BC, and then people try to that are getting their houses taken away, they try to stand up and complain, whether it's social media or other ways. And then what are they going to say? Oh, that's hate speech. You're going to be arrested for that? Because that's where this law could set a precedent in other situations, which would be absolutely ridiculous. They're trying to outlaw the truth.
And lastly, Ryan Gertison says, quote, the hits just keep coming. Another business is heading out of Canada. 165 people will lose their jobs. Aerospace and industrial systems manufacturer.
Yeah, another one bites the dust. Now, this isn't a big one, but it's another one of many.
A manufacturer will be closing its Peterborough location next year, putting 165 people out of work. Global News has learned Woodward Canada's facility on Fisher Drive will close at the end of August 2027, and operations will move to one of its facilities in Poland. The facility, acquired from Safran in 2025, produces specialized electromechanical systems for aviation. The company says after reviewing operations, financial goals, and customer demand, the Peterborough site is, quote, not suited to support future growth. Last November, Federal Defense Minister David McGuinty and Peterborough MP Emma Harrison visited the plant, touting the company for future growth here. In a statement to Global News, the company says, we recognize the real impact this move has on the people working at our Peterborough site and are committed to managing the transition thoughtfully and respectfully, as well as in line with our
Again, over-regulation in the USMCA is going to continue to hurt the Canadian economy, especially over the next years. After the midterms is going to be a big time. If Trump wins those midterms, I expect him to completely zero in on Mark Carney and this Canadian system. It's becoming a threat on the northern border.
But again, we've just been talking, and I see in the chat, you've all been talking a lot about the jets and military equipment and etc. This was a manufacturer of aerospace and industrial systems praised by Canada's defense minister. And not that long ago. And now they're moving away because of the hostile business environment that Canada has created. And again, not being able to grow, and that not being a target even of apparently the Canadian government, but also Canadians themselves or Canadian businesses, because they're also leaving because they know that's what's best.
Well, Pete Holstra was talking about developing a lot of different jets with the U.S. military and just different parts for the jets. And when Canada does that, they actually give Canada a lot of intellectual properties that they're able to use in other contexts outside of jets. And that's the kind of relationship you really want. But with these kinds of businesses leaving Canada, it's going to be harder and harder to do that. And what are they going to do? Team up with the Chinese, who are actually going to steal the Canadian intellectual property? When you team up with the Americans, at least you can take their intellectual property. Hoekstra was saying, we expect you to take the intellectual property and actually do things with it constructively outside of jet engines and things like this.
Oh, they'll team up with the Canadian. The sector. Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super chat saying Leighton Gray spoke. He moved the whole table. Leighton Gray spoke all about Kamloops last night at Let's Talk Alberta event in Two Hills. He is Indigenous. I would be interested to know if he would also be criminalized or penalized under this new proposal that a lot of the chiefs, without consulting their own people, are trying to implement and trying to beg the federal government to use, because it's essentially giving the federal government more and more powers and more censorship powers on a silver plate, which wouldn't surprise me if they were the ones handing the silver plate in the first place.
Yeah, it was Leighton Gray and Bruce Party. I watched that. It was absolutely fantastic. And I'm glad they're really zeroing in on private property rights, because this is one of the mechanisms I think the globalists really want to set precedents in Canada with.
But thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Sean says, I had a pipeline idea straight to Yukon's only port on the Arctic Ocean. I don't know anything, but would it freeze? Could it freeze?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you have pipelines going down from Alaska, so no.
Okay. Sean said...
And it's underground. Once you get underground, you're fine.
Sean says, Guy is giving me anxiety talking about the truth. There should be a law. Exactly. Rage Against Machine says, you will eat the bugs and you will be happy. Not all bugs are bad. Here in Mexico, we do eat bugs, but when you're forced to eat them...
I don't eat bugs. No. She's a bug eater, not me.
But when you're forced to eat them, then that's where the problem comes in. And when you're being propagandized to eat them. Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $2 super chat thing. He said, yes, he would be criminalized too. Yeah.
Who was that?
Leighton Gray.
Oh, yeah.
Under the mechanism that they want. Dara Robinson says, Francois-Philippe Champagne, member of the WEF, Young Global Leaders, as many of the cabinet member current and past.
As well as many conservatives now. I mean, the uniparty is becoming very obvious, and I was very disappointed in Harrison Faulkner yesterday with that clip that we played. Like, he sounded like elbows up for the conservatives, and I hope more people don't start taking those talking points and those attitudes. Those are literally Mark Carney's talking points, and you're having them echoed by conservatives that I actually respect.
They were anti-free market, but essentially pro-socialism arguments and pro-restrictionism. James B says David Cockroach should not ever be allowed on television again.
The only way to get these liberal propaganda outlets off the air is for Alberta to get its independence and not have them on Alberta airwaves.
Pete says, hey, Champagne, why is your wife on the board of that cross-Canada train that will never get built? And that they continue to tout as well. Exactly. And then when you point out whatever connections or whatever weird things are going on with them and family members or the WWF, what was it called? The
WEF.
No, but the water scandal that Trudeau had.
Oh, I can't remember.
Well, all of those. Then you're not allowed to say anything. Jesse Rose says, guess also... in conjunction, guess who has the contract to rebuild Ukraine? Brookfield.
Oh, yeah. Well, I keep bringing this talking point up. Not a lot of people know. Obviously, after she stopped working for the Canadian government, she went over to Ukraine. She's the one actually handing out the contracts from the Canadian money that's going over there. Most recently, it was $900 billion. But Canada has been the #1 country per capita to donate money to Ukraine. 5 out of the 7 contracts, last time I looked it up, went to Chrystia Freeland, who gave 5 of the 7 contracts out to Brookfield Asset Management.
And Beulah Hillier, hello, says, hi, everyone. I am watching from Innisfail, Alberta. Thank you for being here. And hopefully, at least the climate is nice over there. Jesse Rose says, I love this conversation. And eventually, unfortunately, if Alberta doesn't become independent, at least in Canada, you won't be able to have it.
No, and that's the thing.
Mm-hmm. James B says, not a fan of the New World odor. It stinks bad.
Yeah, and nobody's...
That applies to many. That has a lot of layers, that comment does have.
Well, and nobody's a fan of it. And the problem with Canada is I think it shouldn't be called Canada. It might as well be called the New World Order at this point. Mark Carney's literally going to conferences and calling it the New World Order.
The New World.
Yeah.
We know how that turned out, for the Spanish at least. But now let's actually go to, speaking of Alberta and the world.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about the world. Okay, again with the glitchiness. I gotta fix it. Let's start with, hold on. This is also glitching. My computer wants to really give up.
That's why I said we need a new computer, not a new phone.
Eva Vlardingebroek says, we delivered the first 500,000 signatures of the Save Europe Act to the European Parliament today. We came to Brussels and made sure their voices were heard, whether the European Commission likes it or not.
Yeah, and this is absolutely fantastic. And this is different than the American Save Act. The American Save Act is focusing in on making sure everybody has an ID that wants to vote, which be a huge benefit to the Americans. Here, this has to do a lot more with mass immigration, which is also fantastic because the European Union and the UK are the ones that are suffering from mass immigration the most.
Yeah, and it says there, the people want remigration.
Signatures of the Save Europe Act. We are not here to ask for permission from the European Commission. We will bring the voice of the European people to the Parliament, even if they don't want to hear it. Here we are. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a pile of, anonymized of course, names of European patriots who want remigration and who want it now. This is the voice of the people. These people decide, not them. This is the voice of the people. We are over 535,000, so we're already over half of what the threshold would be for an official European Citizens Initiative. That in less than 2 months. So this is already an amazing success.
What does precisely your initiative?
You want to go and read it?
If you can summarize, please.
Of course.
Then I will read it in full.
With the Save Europe Act, we of course want to save Europe from replacement migration, excuse me. And for that, we demand a full and total halt of both legal and illegal non-Western immigration to Europe.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And this is the thing. We need to halt legal immigration because they're transferring what was illegal immigration and they're reclassifying what legal immigration is. So it's going to be almost impossible to get rid of people at that point.
Exactly. And I do love Eva Vlardingebroek because she has been fighting this fight for a long time. She's been spied on essentially by the government. Apple, her phone told her that they were spying on her. And I do like that it's becoming more and more of a topic. And I do continuously see it more and more, even on, for example, Spanish-speaking Instagram. I continue to have more and more creators talking about the issues with immigration, not just in Spain, that accepted 500,000 people just randomly. They just all became citizens all of a sudden. But also in France, and talking about the generalized issue of why Europe is the way it is and why it looks now the way it looks and what the issues are that continue to arise that apparently, seemingly nobody wanted to talk about. More and more people are talking about it.
Well,
so
here
I'm
in
glad.
Mexico as well, there are a
Yes.
ton of protests against immigration now that the United States has shut down the border because it's a remain in Mexico policy now, and the Mexicans do not like massive amounts of immigrants from Venezuela and South America and China and other countries waiting in Mexico.
That's what a lot of people don't know. It's not just down further south of the continent in America, but a lot of, as you were mentioning, Chinese people, people from the Middle East, people from everywhere use Mexico as that bridge, and now they're kind of not have nowhere to go, and gangs are forming, and a bunch of different things are happening. We already have our own issues to deal with, and at least we're a bit more outspoken, and I'm glad more and more people are losing that fear of being outspoken about these kinds of things, and losing the fear of being called a racist or xenophobe. Okay, next. I have to say it that way because YouTube doesn't get mad if I say it like that. Dr. Sheila Nazarian says, quote, I want to ask the students screaming, quote, death to America. Do you have any idea what happens when Americans
And
die?
again, they're quoting her, so she'll say it all for us, I think.
Sorry. Hold on. It's because when I read it, it's because I'm getting things ready.
I want to ask the students screaming death to America. Do you have any idea what happens when American values die? Because I do. My family fled a country where freedom died. You don't know what you have until it's gone. You think America is oppressive because you have never experienced real oppression. You think silence is violence because you've never been silenced. You think words are dangerous because you have never watched a government drag someone away for speaking them. You think capitalism is evil because you have never stood in a bread line. You think borders are immoral because you have never had to flee across one. And you think revolution is romantic because you have never had a revolution take everything from you. I have. And that's why I refuse to be quiet.
And absolutely fantastically put. And Canadians under Mark Carney are about to learn the other half of the coin. They've had it good for decades. They're not going to have it good for much longer because Mark Carney is driving them towards socialism and eventually communism. And he's building the mechanisms here. So you're only going to have this brief little shot of socialism before he drives you right into communism. And socialism is the soft sell for communism.
But it's also interesting because as she was speaking there, and very well put, the left and the socialists and the communists are always saying, oh, but the right and the people that like capitalism and free markets are not empathetic at all. They don't know how to show empathy. I think we're way more empathetic because we realize the issues with the systems that they're proposing that they don't want to even look at. I mean, if you even mention that Che Guevara used to shoot gay people in the head in front of everybody as a statement, but then they don't believe you. I think it's way more empathetic to be able to say, oh, these things, we've already seen them happening. We already see where these systems lead. And we're trying to tell you that where you live right now is actually a pretty great place in the case of the US.
Yeah, and I think we were talking at the beginning of the show about Tucker Carlson's possible third party that would split the vote with the GOP. And a lot of people are saying, well, they're united on the issue of Israel. The problem with that is I don't have really a hard stance on Israel one way or the other, but the problem if they unite on that issue, the people they're trying to unite from the left with are the most radical leftists and are trying to bring communism and socialism into that new party movement, which is going to be a big problem for them.
That's essentially opening the door to more of the same ideas. A lot of them even had been fighting for decades now.
Well, they want to sell this new party as a moderate party with the right-wing values from Tucker Carlson and the other right-wing kind of influencers. But you have to realize the unholy alliance they're making is with the communist and socialist wing of the other side.
They've literally completely flipped on whatever their ideals and their morals are. So I don't think the label even of conservatism applies to them anymore.
Well, it does, but yeah.
We have a difference of opinion on this topic as well. But
well, I actually agree with them on the Israel issue. I think they understand that Israel issue is a uniting issue. It's all the other tangential issues that they're going to stand together on, which is going to be the downfall of that party. And ultimately, I think that party is meant to be more of a way to divide the vote in 2028.
Tony Saruga says, quote, Trump just proposed JFK's most terrifying speech and the deep state is panicking. Oh, that's a long one. Okay.
Yeah, and this has a lot to do with communism, and Canada is headed in this direction. So,
And I mean, if the U.S. isn't careful, the U.S. is too.
Communism is so often described as an ideology or a belief that exists somewhere other than in the United States. Let me ask you, sir, just how serious a threat to our national security are these communist subversive activities in the United States today?
Well, I think they're serious. I think it's a matter that we should continue to give great care and attention to. We should support the laws which the United States has passed in order to protect us from those who would destroy us from within. We should sustain the Department of Justice in its efforts and the FBI, and we should be continually alert. I think if the United States is maintaining a strong society here in the United States, I think that we can meet any internal threat. The major threat is external and will continue.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. It conducts the Cold War, in short, with a wartime discipline no democracy would ever hope or wish to match. Nevertheless, every democracy recognizes the necessary restraints of national security. And the question remains whether those restraints need to be more strictly observed.
okay, and I will say during his time, it was really the infiltration of academia, and we've seen the full infiltration of academia from then until now. The conservatives have been completely pushed out, and we're seeing a complete distortion of what academia has become. They are indoctrination centers now at this point, especially in Canada.
But I will also say now there's also the threat of the DSA, for example, within the U.S., the Democratic Socialists of America, the NDP in Canada, essentially just being the same thing, but northern and more retarded than the other ones. And that's saying something. But also, as you were mentioning, Tucker and his new party and this new idea of essentially the horseshoe theory and finally actually completing it and doing the damn thing. A lot of these members of the retarded right are compromising a lot of what they're supposedly standing on. And we just heard it right there from JFK himself, but from a lot of people as well, where they're willing to sacrifice a lot of the actual things that would happen if they allow all of these ideas to come to fruition, and forgetting the actual concept of, for example, why the U.S. is so important and so different than other places.
And I would say about this third party that is emerging in the United States, they're trying to distract everybody with Israel, Israel, Israel. And whatever way a lot of people are going to agree with them on that issue, and that's absolutely fine. But look at the other issues and look who is in the alliance on both sides. A lot of the people that are supporting this new party are supporting them because they support the right-wing influencers and not paying attention to the other half of that alliance right now. And I really think it's a sneaky way to get socialism and communism not only into the right, but into a new party here.
Infiltration. You just said it. But we've also been giving this example within Canada, now also within the US, of churches. I mean, churches have been compromised, certain ones and certain branches of Christianity have been compromised for a long time in Canada. They have been putting on the mask. That is a phrase we used to use a lot of Christianity and the church, but now progressive and for the gays and for the alphabet community. And that is how they're able to continuously push through and push in. I have a whole story.
Okay, let's get into comments if we can.
Can I get into my story?
No, let's get into comments if we can.
Yeah, people like my stories. Because it has to do with this, and I think it would help evidence a lot of things. But Pete says, fine. Pete says, did you see Corey's highlight of the Freedom Gear warehouse in Red Deer? Definitely going up there this weekend.
Oh, fantastic. No, I didn't catch it though.
Yes. Sean says, Nat, but it creates jobs. Isn't that the important part with all the big projects that are corrupt? What kind of jobs are they creating, and what in the end is the end goal of it as well, I would say.
And a lot of them aren't creating jobs because it's so much money is being laundered now that very few jobs are actually being created.
Mm-hmm. And Pete says about the Corey Morgan shop. Sorry, I was meant to read them together. Says it's called Cool Shit Warehouse. Cool Stuff Warehouse, I have to say. But we do like to highlight when things like that come up. And we always say, seriously, they have a site. Yep, go check out the site. And Sean says, let the cosplayers lead. No. Don't let the cosplayers lead. Because then you end up like the rest of Latin America, which is the story I was going to get into, but you didn't. Hold on. Jesse Rose says, refugees here bringing in $80 to $100 a month, and yet the people, not so much.
Yeah, and they're just getting more benefit. They get dental, they get laundry service, they get all kinds of services not provided to Canadians. And the point is not to provide that for Canadians. The point is to have a self-sufficient society.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm trying to find the next ones, because sometimes they're talking to each other, so I'm trying to avoid those. James B says, it has become the upside down clown world.
Yeah.
And if you notice it, then you're dangerous. So
well, and it was very apparent the other day, and Nick Fuentes was talking about Hunter Biden and how he's just so much better than Trump Jr. and a bunch of other things, just absolutely praising Hunter Biden. And I've seen more and more of this. Hunter Biden is doing a ton of press, and he's really linking himself into this new uniparty thing.
He's going to be the candidate.
Ridiculous. Imagine if it was Hunter Biden and Tucker.
It's the retarded right. It's the left. It's the retard.
And I used to like Tucker a lot.
I started disliking him a long time before you did, but I'm glad you saw the light. Casey Willis says, Canada officially recorded its first ever negative natural increase in population in the first quarter of 2026. Mortalities exceeded births by 155. And it's surprising that just now, and a lot of that had to do with record numbers of immigrants that were coming in during the COVID-19 or the jibby jab era to kind of try to counteract those numbers. But then they also started increasing maid services and expanding that as well. Plus, with the aging population and with not being able to get in as many people, more people leaving, even the immigrants, after noticing that Canada is not a place that they can even try to exist within. Well, yes, then I'm surprised it's taken up to now for that natural increase to natural decrease to be noted. But yeah, I mean, not surprised. Jesse Rose says, I'm Canadian. Sounds like the old beer commercial. Lol, no doubt about it. Where B. Philip Vespa says, Tucker Candace and all the other grifters are using the issue of Israel to hide their clandestine dealings with the left. Nick Fuentes may be slowly figuring this out after his debate with Sneeko. So glad because we used to talk a lot about
it. I used to watch Fuentes on a daily basis because he's very, very well spoken. The problem is he has got so much horseshoe theory within his politics now. It's just it's not bearable to watch. But he's got probably the best delivery for the new era of content creators that are into politics and things like that. It's just a shame where he's at though.
And Jesse Rose says, I hope they don't I'm guessing you meant pull this live because I'm like talking with the chat. No, we usually leave the chat up with the live as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully YouTube doesn't get mad at us, but
it was Fuentes and Tucker at one point, which had really good delivery, and I think they were soft selling them, so they had a very good foundation, I think, and then that warped over time into this horseshoe theory politics, which is now emerging into a third party, which is going to be really dangerous.
Well, I mean, if they were able to compromise their values at any point, I would say did they ever really hold those values? Especially the ones that were always preaching, literally, about Christianity.
There's obviously a lot of money going into this new third party, and I think it's organized by a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Sean. Sean says, not to tell the story. I'm not allowed to. I'll bring it tomorrow, I guess. Well, no, because it has to do with this. Okay, fine, I won't. Pete says, I am a Medicine Hat resident and a resident of Calgary. I hereby 100% approve of Red Deer. Thank you. Sean says, we know what Mexico did with Central America. It was annexed for a whole year and a half, a legacy of colonialism that will never heal. Kind of. That was not the story I wanted to get into, but yes and no, but that got resolved, as you mentioned, pretty quickly in about a year. Where are we? Pete says, sorry, Nat, it's Sean's fault. What's Sean's fault? Jezreel says, wait till someone starts exposing all the fraud for daycares and adult daycares and much more, millions of taxpayer dollars within Canada. I think at this point that would be essentially impossible.
Yeah, well, Nick Shirley is exposing a lot of that right now. He was just doing an interview about those adult daycares, which is ridiculous.
But now we are heading over to RUM Billy. Maybe I can tell my story then. But if you haven't done so, please don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Again, it really does help us out. There's a 30-second wait screen, and then we pop up over there. There's a few stories that are too spicy for YouTube. I mean, this stream was kind of spicy, so hopefully it stays up. But thank you for joining us, and we'll see you over there in 30 seconds.
Let's get ready to